Let me walk you through a typical Saturday for the average dedicated Husker fan. You wake up and breathe in the crisp fall air with newfound confidence in the team that they're going to get a win today. Fast forward a few hours and you have a sick feeling in your stomach after the Huskers just took another loss. You wonder if it will ever get better. The Nebraska football team has been underachieving majorly in the last decade, according to the Sports Reference College Football page, which was last updated on Saturday, October 26th. Nebraska is 77-49 in the last 10 years. That's a record that doesn't sit very well with fans of a proud program. I know everyone in the audience today is a Nebraska football fan to some degree. Let me dive deeper into the facts and give you the background as to why they struggled so badly recently. I've been a diehard Nebraska fan for all my life. The last decade has been prime Nebraska football for me. I've watched every single game from start to finish for the last decade. Nebraska football has hit a new historic low as a program within the last 10 years due to coaching, lack of buy-in, and lack of player talent. Today I'm going to give you the details behind the struggles on and off the field. First, I'm going to examine the coaches Nebraska has had and why their coaching style didn't work well here. Second, I'll explain the lack of buy-in all the way from the athletic director all the way down to the players. Lastly, I will analyze the player talent we've had here for the last 10 years and how that leads to on-field performance. With all of that being said, let me take you through a stroll down a painful memory lane to find out why Nebraska football has been so bad. The past two head coaches Nebraska has had each brought something to help their team and to hinder their cause as a head coach. On one end of the spectrum, Bo Pelini 10 years ago was hired as Nebraska's head football coach. His greatest asset was inspiring players and getting them to play for him. The players loved him as head coach. He was a tough-minded individual who used a tough love mentality. Although this led to cameras constantly looking for and catching him being irate with the officials and yelling in a player's face. His relations with the media wasn't very good either. He constantly challenged reporters when they questioned his coaching ability. He also could never win the big game. He took care of business against the teams he was supposed to beat, but when it came to teams like Wisconsin and Ohio State, a blowout was surely on the horizon. If you take a look at this bar graph, over each year, he consistently won 10 to 9 games. Although that wasn't good enough for a program wanting to be back to its glory days. Referring back to Sports Reference College Football website, Bo Pelini's final record at Nebraska was 56-27. On the other end of the spectrum, Mike Riley was hired shortly after Bo Pelini's firing after the 2014 season. His tenure lasted from 2015 to 2017. Mike Riley's greatest asset was recruiting. He brought a lot of hype to the program and signed some of the best players our program has ever had. He was hired to be the complete opposite of Bo Pelini, though, which means he was a soft individual who hardly ever yelled or got angry. He left much of his coaching to his average or below average assistants. His biggest downfall was hardly having any player accountability in the program, and players did what they wanted when they wanted. The team was very soft-minded and weak while he was head coach. Sports Reference College Football website tells us that Mike Riley's record at Nebraska was 19-19, and as you can see, the win total is not anything near what Bo Pelini's was. Now that you're aware of the coaching struggles, let's move on to the buy-in factor. One of the biggest issues that has plagued the Husker football program is lack of buy-in from almost everyone involved. Starting with the AD, Sean Eichhorst, he never really had the football program's best interest in mind. He was a businessman who cared about the politics and the financial aspect of his job more than he did the football team. He hired Mike Riley to eliminate the hassle of a hothead on the sideline. He also tried to eliminate Nebraska's Black Friday matchup with Iowa, which didn't sit well with many Husker fans. I already touched on the head coaches in my previous point, but the assistant coaches also played a factor. Many assistant coaches would let players get away with trashing the locker room, not going to class or showing up to class late, and being more of a friend than their coach. The players are to blame as well when it comes to lack of buy-in. Towards the back half of Mike Riley's tenure, the football players had developed a losing culture. Whenever they were down in games, they would give up, and they didn't work hard in practice hardly. They didn't put in work in the weight room either, which caused them to be pushed around by other opponents. As you can see, not buying in can harm a program quite a bit. Let's move on to my last point, which is the lack of player talent. Lack of player talent and lack of player development is the biggest difference between winning and losing games. Taking a look at the last 10 recruiting classes, all of them range between 20th and 30th nationally. If you look at the chart provided, Rival's online recruiting website shows us what each class was ranked each year. Nebraska is a tough place to recruit to because of location. That means that we have to recruit the mid-tier players and develop them throughout the 4 years in college. From the past 10 recruiting classes, about 10 to 15 players per class either transferred or didn't play significant downs. That leaves very few players that actually contribute. Lack of talent has also been glaringly evident on the defensive side of the ball through the years. One of the most alarming stats is Nebraska's defensive performance against traditional power Ohio State. According to Chris Basnett from the Lincoln Journal-Star, after last year's game against Ohio State, the defense hadn't forced Ohio State to punt since 2012. Now, Nebraska hadn't played Ohio State every year since 2012, but that's still a very alarming stat. The defense also allowed 54 points to a very average Minnesota team last year that finished 6-6. It's clear the talent level on defense must improve. So in conclusion, Husker football has endured a decade of struggle on the football field that's due to many contributing factors. We have gone over the previous coaches and what their strengths and weaknesses were. We talked about the lack of buy-in from everyone starting at the AD down to the player level. And we finished with a lack of recruiting, development, success over the years. Here's to the future and hopefully an increased performance from the Nebraska football team.